welcome to Tome of Uselessness. I'm Devon.
I'm Dan.
And today we're going to look at one of our favorite holiday classics. I've got my Christmas leggings on and I'm all ready by the tree with my eggnog. But first, what?
I thought you were going to say you have your favorite Christmas mask.
Yeah, my favorite Christmas mask and cloak.
Yeah, exactly.
But first, Dan, did you like anything this week?
I have a few things, but I wanted to talk a little bit because we talked last time about the Wonder Woman release schedule, about how they're going to release it on the 25th as well as on HBO Max.
Yeah, but our theaters are closed now.
Our theaters are technically closed. I mean, maybe they'll open in the next couple of weeks, who knows? But I don't know if you saw the news about how Warner Brothers now has updated that, and they're going to release all of their slated movies in theaters and HBO Max next year.
Interesting.
So that's like Dune, The Matrix, of course, Wonder Woman, like we were just talking about. Like, there's a whole bunch. It's like their whole slate.
Wait. Pause. Yeah. Rewind. Did you say The Matrix?
Yeah, Matrix 4.
They made a Matrix 4?
Yeah.
Is Keanu Reeves in it?
He is.
What?
Apparently, it's him and Carrie-Anne Moss both returned. I don't think Lawrence Fishburne returned.
Didn't he die at the end of Matrix 3?
Yeah, but his body and brain was a program, so they could just reclone him and stuff.
Wait, his body and brain was a program?
Well, his entire consciousness was technically a program algorithm thing, and so it's like they could recreate him. There's backup copies. That's easy sci-fi stuff.
I don't remember how Matrix 3 ended. I remember he kind of blew up or something.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, I didn't even know they made that. I didn't know there was a demand for that.
Yeah, that's the weird part. I mean, I'm a fan of The Matrix, the first one especially, but yeah, I was also never like, I want to see a Matrix 4.
Yeah, because they wrapped up the story.
Yeah. I have no idea what the story is. Purposely, of course, keeping myself in the dark, as it were.
I had heard nothing. You know what? I did hear somebody say Matrix 4 in an offhanded comment, and I thought that it was like a joke.
Sure.
I've heard nothing about this movie. Wow, I'm out of touch.
No, that's fine. But like I said, it's just I thought that was interesting news that they're going to try this method out. But again, HBO Max is only in America, so it doesn't really affect us too much. But I just thought that's kind of an interesting thing.
They might be on Crave, because Crave gets all the HBO shows in Canada.
Yes.
But it's very expensive, and it's stupid, and it's owned by Bell, and I hate Bell.
Yeah. Well, I remember, because you were saying it was like extra on top of Crave to even get HBO stuff.
Yeah. Bell and Ron Weasley, those are my nemesis.
Fair enough. But yeah, so talking about some stuff I liked, I finally finished up that book I was talking about, Pandora's Star by Peter Hamilton. It was really good, and in fact, before I was finished reading it, I was like planning on, I was like, oh, I'll take a break from some sci-fi, read something else. But the way it ended, I almost immediately read the sequel. Because it was just...
You were texting me about books.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember. Because you're like, I thought you were... Because you texted me about the girl with the dragon tattoo. Mm-hmm. And I thought you were saying I should read it. I like misunderstood your text.
Yeah.
I thought you were really like, no, read this. And I was like, oh, that's random, but yeah, sure.
No, I was curious if you had read it, because now I'm reading it, and I'm like 400 pages in, I think I want to say. Something like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's all right so far.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. It's some kind of, mystery type thing, so I was like, yeah, but so far it's interesting. I think what's interesting, of course, is that it's translated from a Swedish author. So...
Yeah, and there's like two versions of the movie, right? There's like the American version and the Swedish version. Yes,
one with Noomi Rapace, and then I don't know who the actress was that played the girl in the American version.
Yeah, and then Claire Foy is playing her in the girl with the spider friend or something.
The girl in the spider web? The one that came out a couple years ago?
Yeah, that's Claire Foy. She plays Queen Elizabeth in the first 2 seasons of The Crown.
Ah.
Yeah.
But yes, I really enjoyed that book. And like I said, it was very built up, very great to the end. Like I said, I almost rolled right into the sequel, but held off. I'll get to that eventually. I finally watched Columbiana. Have you ever seen that with Zoe Saldana?
Was that the one that was supposed to be like a sequel to Leon the Professional?
I think yes and no, because it obviously follows a female character, but Luc Besson didn't write it on his own. So I think maybe some ideas were transposed,
Oh,
maybe.
okay.
But like it follows a very similar pattern where young girl, family killed, and then she grows up to get revenge.
Yeah, because I feel like it was supposed to be a sequel, and then like for whatever reason they decided not to carry on the franchise.
I don't know. I was trying to read into that a little bit, and I think that was more just like a rumor or something that somebody said, and it kind of stuck or whatever. Or Luc Besson was probably like, "Yeah, maybe that could have been an idea." You know how that works. Yeah.
He had an intern being like, "Is this the sequel to Leon?" And he was like, "Yeah, whatever."
Sure, yeah. But it was pretty good. But I thought what was interesting, because I think it came out in 2011 or something like that, I think I want to say, is that you could tell fight choreography, and maybe again, not bashing on Zoe Saldana, she's obviously grown as an actress and an action star, that she wasn't as good back then. So there's just like in a couple of the hand-to-hand fight scenes, like, a lot of like the close-up quick cuts, can't tell what's happening. Action.
Oh, that was kind of the style then too, though.
I know, and that it's a detriment to the movie essentially.
Yeah, that's the one thing I don't like about Bourne movies is that you can never see what's happening.
The last two, especially the first Bourne movie, it's not as prevalent.
Yeah, no, the last two though.
Yeah, they're pretty bad for that.
For sure.
But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it, but like I said, there was some couple knocks down on it, but overall good stuff there. Finished The Wire season 5 finally, so I finished the entire of The Wire.
Nice.
And it was good, as everyone says, high quality HBO television from back in the day. And I also finished Ajin season 2, which was that anime about the immortals that come back to life.
Okay.
And it was interesting because it was like season.
Oh, yeah. I remember we were talking about. Yeah. I'm caught up now. Sorry.
Sure. No, it's all good. So yeah, season 2.
From our She-Ra episode.
Yes, from our She-Ra episode. Season 2 was just, they're like, we're gonna fight the main bad guy, and they fight and capture the main bad guy. Series of events and twists and turns and stuff like that. I did like the end kind of setup was kind of cool, and that like, they have a plan, they go in and it's working quite well, but then the bad guy had like, rigged the entire sewer system to like collapse essentially, and then kills everybody, but all the people that can regenerate, and then they fight it out and stuff like that. So it was cool.
Cool.
But then it ends weird or oddly. Again, this might be straight out of the manga, where he gets captured, the bad guy, and in a mid-Atlantic flight, I assume it is, from Japan to America, he manages to escape and then like jump out of the plane.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Again, he can't die, so.
I still imagine that it would be inconvenient.
Sure, exactly, right? So, but again, I don't know if there's going to be a season 3 or if they're just going to leave it alone.
Yeah. Interesting.
But anyway, so yeah, it was cool. It was, like I said, it wasn't too long, and I did enjoy it in the end. That's all I got.
I have less.
Sure. What do you got?
Let's see, like offhandedly, I have paused watching Elementary. I think I'm almost finished season 2, but it was getting to be too much.
Sure.
So that's on pause. Or no, maybe on season 3. I don't remember. It's all a blur.
Well, shows like that are meant to be, like we were talking about previously, like week to week, when you watch them in a jam, they do start to, you're like, okay, I need a break.
Yeah, well, like Lucy Liu is charming and pretty, so sometimes I just watch it for that. Okay, that's that. It's still okay, but I'm losing interest. I rewatched The Princess Diaries and The Princess Diaries 2 after our Princess Switch conversation.
And you were correct, it was Anne Hathaway?
Oh, yeah. I knew it was Anne Hathaway. I don't know. They're still fun. They're really stupid, but I still like them. because I've been like walking back and forth to work, I've been listening to audiobooks. So I'm almost finished the second most current Dresden Files book, which is called Peace Talks by Jim Butcher.
Nice.
Yeah, it's I know you've read the Dresden. Have you read up to whatever the last one was?
I think so.
The bank robbery one?
Maybe.
The heist one? Maybe.
Yeah, but they have to steal from like from like Hades or something like that, basically.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that was So this is the Peace Talks comes next, and there's like a 6-year gap.
Really?
Well, like in our time.
Oh, I thought you meant in book time.
No. It's only like 6 months in book time.
Right.
But for us, it's been like a 6-year gap. And so like listening to it, I have to like look stuff up because this is like the like 15th book in the series or something.
Yeah, definitely 15, 16. It's quite high.
They have so many characters, so many events, and then there's like, I think there's 2 volumes of short stories. So I just have to keep looking things up because I don't remember characters or what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, so like 6 years ago, or even like before that, when I started the Dresden series, it was kind of like in vogue to do a lot of like pop culture references in those kind of books. Like Ready Player One is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
And he has kept up that trend, but I'm over it now. So like the story, also there was one scene that made me kind of uncomfortable because he kind of like, so his friend's daughter is like growing up and she's like a teenager now, and he like comments on how she's kind of like becoming sexy. And like that just kind of wigs me out a bit. Like I don't know. I don't want to hear about it. Like it doesn't have to be in there. He can say she like looks like a young woman now and he remembers her being a child if they want to like contrast that, but I just don't want that in anything. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm just old and I don't have a tolerance for it anymore.
Right.
Also, listening to an audiobook versus reading it, you notice that Jim Butcher has very few ways to say he said or she said. So when you're listening to it, it's like, Harry, we have to get to the car, she said. Oh no, I don't want to go to the car, I said. And it's so repetitive.
Yeah.
When you hear it a bunch in a row, it's just like, oh my God, just exclaimed or anything, like Karen huffed, like something, like.
Yeah, exactly. When you're reading it, your brain, or as your internal narration, you can just cut those essentially in a sense that you're just like, yeah, I get it. I know how a conversation works.
Yeah, but when you're like hearing it, it's just over and over, and it's like, okay, like, woo, use a thesaurus. I don't care, like.
Well, it's weird because I've seen that kind of stuff cut out occasionally. Like some authors, it's just like, there'll be a block of 5 sentences and there's no like she said, he said. It's just like, who's talking.
Yeah, maybe they added it for the audiobook to like keep you, but like.
No, you're probably correct that they're in the text.
The other audiobooks I've listened to, I've never noticed that. And in his, it's just like, I was like starting to zone out because I just kept hearing it over and over and over and over.
Nice.
But overall, I mean, the story's good and it's a romp with a wizard in modern times. And the stakes are really high because they have to be now because it's book 20,000.
Yeah, and he's got so many powers and responsibilities and stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's okay. I'll let you know how I feel at the end of it. I believe it ends on a cliffhanger. Because this came out in July and Battlegrounds came out in September.
Right.
And I think it's like a part 1, part 2 situation.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but I'll let you know what I think when I'm finished it. But those are my critiques. No sexy teens. Stop using said.
Yeah.
Dial back the pop culture references.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Jim Butcher is listening and taking notes.
Absolutely.
It's our number one fan. But anyways, are you ready to get into our festive holiday movie?
Very much so.
So this week we watched the Christmas classic Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick.
From 1999.
Starring Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. And Dan, before we get into anything about the movie, what were your thoughts on this? Because I haven't told you any of mine, except that I felt like it was very long.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing with this film is I'm a big fan of a lot of Stanley Kubrick's work, and I have never seen this movie, mainly just because I had heard, like that it was and I had no interest in the subject matter, that I was like, I don't really care. And admittedly, I watched this movie in 2 parts because I was just like, I don't know, I was kind of like, it wasn't engaging in a sense, right? So I was like, I took a break from it, came back and watched it again. And then when I finished watching the movie, maybe about a quarter way through the movie, I was like, this movie has to be based off a book or something, because I felt like there was just something I'm not getting. And then at the end credits, when it flashes up based on this book, I quickly Googled the book, read a synopsis, and then everything made sense. And the movie became far better, but I was like, what a detriment as an audience watching the movie that I didn't get what was going on in the movie until I looked up the source material it was based off of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like, here's the thing about as soon as the Christmas party at the beginning ends.
Yeah.
I was on Wikipedia trying to figure out what was going on.
Well, I will say though, one of the first thing when they were shooting in that Christmas party, you could definitely tell that it was from another era, like the movie, that I was like, this is shot on film, and the lighting was meticulously set up and everything, because it was so warm and had just such a different feel.
Yeah, it was like the cinematography in it, I actually thought was really beautiful, and the lighting and everything was really great with the Christmas tree lights kind of all over the place. But I have some mixed feelings about this movie.
Well, and that's what I was saying, is that after I finished the movie and then read that synopsis of the book, and I was like, oh, and then it all, like, everything clicked into place, and then the movie became better. Because when I first finished, like, when the first credit rolled, I was like, I don't know, man. And then, like I said, I read that and I was like, okay. And then since that time, so this was last night I finished this movie, me too. Grudgingly, it's gotten better in my brain.
The store I work at is like a costume shop, as you know.
Of course, it made me think of it, of course.
Sometimes we cater to alternative scenes, and one of the scenes that we ended up getting a lot of business from in the past was a swinger scene, and there was a club in Vancouver that would do an Eyes Wide Shut party every year.
Okay, yeah.
And so we would sell out of black cloaks and masks in January.
Sure, it makes perfect sense.
But I had that knowledge and no knowledge of the movie going into it.
Right.
So I thought this was going to be a much different movie than what it was.
Yeah, and I also had a different idea of the movie as well before going in, that I thought it was like, okay, they got drawn into some kind of crazy world where there was an orgy, and then like either, things spiral out of control or whatever. But that's totally not it.
Yeah, I thought it was like a couple that joins like a group that does orgies, and they like explore what it means to be a couple through these orgies. That's kind of what my, preconceived notion based on selling cloaks to swingers was.
Yeah, and that's kind of, like I was saying, that's kind of the idea I had as well. I thought as a couple they went in and got involved, and then it, turns weird and etc.
Yeah, that's not what that was.
No. And it's crazy as well that stars Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Tom Cruise is 99% in the movie, and Nicole Kidman is in 2% of this movie. Right?
Yeah, I agree. But like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I felt like whenever Nicole Kidman was on the screen, that's the only thing I was paying attention to.
Oh, absolutely. She was great in the
She is
movie.
so just I couldn't I don't know. I believed everything she was like. I believed she was a character the entire movie. She's like beautiful and like you like can't take your eyes off her when she's on screen.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know how you felt. A lot of the times I felt like it was Tom Cruise saying lines in a movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was reading, there was, of course, tons of behind the scenes stuff, about this movie. And, Kubrick notorious for tons of takes, sometimes in the hundreds. And basically, Tom Cruise especially was actually very involved in the project and wanted to, do a great movie for Kubrick. But like they were trying not to rely on the Tom Cruise charm. There's like a couple scenes where he's, cruisy, charming Tom Cruise, but everything else, he did like hundreds of takes of lines. So it was like always different. So apparently like he was even having difficulty because he wasn't even being shown dailies. So he couldn't know like, how is my character supposed to be my character?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So there's stuff like that. So the movie we see, like the shot in the film, like that's the one that Kubrick chose. So we don't know what else was out there in a sense, right?
And I guess you should note that, like, even though this is Kubrick's last movie, it's not necessarily what his vision was, because he, like, made the cut and showed it to Nicole and Tom.
Mm-hmm.
But in previous films, he's made a lot of changes in post-production.
As far as I'm aware, he delivered the cut to Warner Brothers and then died 4 days later.
Yeah, but I heard that, like, in that time, he's made more cuts like after that point in other movies.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
So like the movie that we see isn't necessarily the movie he wanted to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I thought the font in the opening credits was really pretentious. That was my first thing. Tony was in the room when it came up, and I'm like, oh my god.
But I mean, that's not shocking. I mean, you're about to sit down and watch a Stanley Kubrick thing with.
Yeah, no, I know. Hey, on a side note, I think this is the first Stanley Kubrick movie that I've watched from beginning to end.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen the full movie of The Shining. I've never seen. He did Apocalypse Now, right?
No, that was Coppola.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
He did
Full Metal Jacket was his war movie.
Yeah, I've never seen that. I've never seen 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
I've never seen any of his movies.
Oh, that's kind of crazy to go in with this one as the intro movie then.
Yep. Because, like, I mean, we'll get into the plot in a second, but I did kind of get, like, I don't know, it was a different time and stuff, but I don't feel like it would be the same movie if he made it today.
Oh, definitely not. Like, there's just no way you could release a 2-hour and 40-minute movie of this movie today.
Well, that too, but also just Tom Cruise's character felt a little bit like borderline men's rights activist to me.
Right. Yeah, definitely the tone and attitude in certain areas. I'm like, ooh, not good.
Yeah, and like we'll get into it when we get into the plot, but there was a scene where again I'm like, we don't need sexy teens, just move on. We just don't need adult men sexualizing women under 18. No more of that. I'm out.
Fair enough. Well, and so he didn't write this one by himself. He wrote it with another guy, Frederick Raphael. And then, like I was saying, it's based on the book, I'm going to butcher this name, Nouvelle, sorry. By Arthur Schnitzer from 1926. Oh my God.
Dan, I've actually done research for this one.
Excellent. I like it.
Did you know that at one point this was going to be a comedy with Woody Allen?
I did know that, yes. And when I read that, I was like, I can't believe that.
And
but also, I'm glad they changed that.
At another point, it was going to be starring Steve Martin.
Yeah. It sounded so odd.
Sometimes you make good choices.
Absolutely, yeah. And I thought it was kind of interesting that it had a budget of about 65 million and its worldwide box office was 162 million approximately. So it's like it was a moderate hit, but I feel like there was some critical.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of backlash. I feel like it was probably a hit because it was advertised as a super erotic movie.
Yeah.
Which, like, yeah, there's boobies in it, but like,
Yeah, I mean, for sure it gets its nudity quota in, which that was a thing. One of the things Kubrick did agree with that is in editing, he watched a lot of like Showgirls and that kind of stuff like that. So he's like, what can I do with the MPAA? But he also agreed to allow CG elements to cover nudity if it needed so they could get R instead of NC-17.
Right, yeah, I read that too.
Yeah, interesting stuff for sure. But you
did not read the article called Eyed Wide Shut is actually Kubrick's best movie, though. Did you?
I did not read that, no.
I saw it in a YouTube video that someone flashed it on the screen, so I'm like, that's good enough.
Fair enough. But yeah, I guess let's talk about what happens in this movie here, Devon.
Yeah, you want me to tell you the plot?
Sure. It's over 2 days of Christmas. I know that part.
Yeah. So Tom Cruise. Wait, let's use their names. What was his name again?
It was Dr. William Hartford, or Bill, and she was Alice Hartford.
Okay, so Bill and Alice are a married couple, and they have a little daughter named Helena. I don't know why I remembered Helena's name.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we start off in their apartment, and they're headed to a Christmas party at a very rich client of Bill's that he does special house calls for, so I guess he gets invited to the special parties.
Also, that first frame, I was like, it's Nicole Kidman nude. And I was like, whoa, that's quite the first frame of a movie.
Yep, they're like, here, this is what you want. This is what you came for.
Yeah.
So Bill and Alice go to this party, and Bill recognizes someone he knew from med school is playing the piano. So he goes to talk to him, and Alice goes to the washroom, and then she's going to meet him at the bar. And as she's waiting for Bill, a handsome European man starts flirting with her and dancing with her. And she's flirting back. And it's like, when you watch that scene, you're like, wow, I would go home with Nicole Kidman too. She's so like just charming. I don't know. Whatever. I'll stop fawning. I love Nicole Kidman. It's fine. So Alice is with this gentleman. She sees her husband Bill with two models who are flirting with him, and it almost looks like he's gonna go somewhere with them, but he gets called away at the last minute by the rich guy, because the rich guy has a lady friend who has done a snowball. Is that what it was called?
It was snowball or speedball. He didn't identify it, and I don't know enough about drug culture to know the right one.
It's cocaine and heroin.
Yeah.
And she's like kind of overdosed. Huh?
She's messed up, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, she had too much. Bill is dealing with that. European gentleman kind of offers Alice to go away with him and have adult time, in so many words, but she declines. Bill makes sure that Mandy, the passed out lady from Snowballs, is okay. And then he rejoins Alice. They go home. They have a weird sex scene where Nicole Kidman just looks at herself in the mirror. The next day they go about their lives. And at the end of the day, they smoke pot together. And Alice reveals, well, Alice kind of picks a fight with him because she wants to know what was going on with the two girls.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I love you, and I know that you'd never cheat on me because you're a woman and you don't think the same way men do. And she's like, well, fuck you. I almost had an affair a year ago, but I changed my mind. Well, then he gets a phone call and has to leave because one of his rich clients has died. And then he goes to the rich client, and his daughter's there, and she starts making out with him in the room with her dead dad. This is an adult daughter, not a child. But before that, she tells him he's getting married, and then her fiance, who looks a lot like Bill, shows up. So then he leaves, and he's kind of upset. Does he meet up with a sex worker at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then he meets a sex worker named, it's a weird name. What was it?
I think it's, well, and again, this is blurring the lines. In the book, it was Mizzy, but I don't remember what they used in the movie. But he meets up this, sex worker on the streets. And she's like, let's go to my place. And he says, sure.
Yeah, he says, sure. They're making out. Then Alice calls his cell phone in the middle. He has like a moment of guilt, pays the sex worker anyways, and then leaves.
Yeah.
Goes to a bar because he sees that his piano friend, Nick Nightingale, which is a great name.
Yeah. Yeah, because his friend told him, he's like, hey, I'll be playing at this club for the next couple weeks. Why don't you come see me at some point?
Oh, okay.
So he's like, I'm in the area. I'll go see him.
Yeah. So he goes in, he sees them. He finds out that Nick's next gig is one where he has to play the piano blindfolded for rich people in a mansion that are having an orgy with sexy girls. And it's by invitation only, and they have strict dress code, and there's a password. So he needles Nick to get the password and the dress code and the address. And then he goes to an ex-client's house, and this is like the middle of the night, to try to get him to open up his costume shop so that Bill can get the costume to go to the rich people orgy. And I really like the actor that played the owner.
Yeah, I forgot to write down his name, but he's been in many things as well.
He was in American Gods too, wasn't he?
I don't know. Was he?
Well, maybe not, but he should have been.
Yeah, I assume if he wasn't, he could be easily.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So it's not actually his client. It's this other dude that bought the store.
Yeah.
And the house, I guess. And so he helps him get the costume together. And in the middle of it, they're interrupted by his teenage daughter, who's engaged in some sort of sexual escapade with two adult men in wigs.
Yeah.
And he's really mad, and he locks them in an office, and he's going to call the police. And she's kind of like hanging off of Bill, and they're making way too much eye contact, and it's very uncomfortable to watch. And I didn't like that scene very much.
Yeah, a young Lily Sobieski.
Yeah, did you know she's actually like Polish royalty?
I did not know that.
Oh, she's Polish royalty.
Huh.
She's in line for a throne.
Nice.
So then he goes to the mansion for the orgy party, and he shows up in a taxi, and he rips a $100 bill in half, which is really irritating. To get the taxi driver to stay, because then he'd give him the rest of the 100 plus whatever the meter was.
Yeah. He
goes into the party, and it's sex orgy. It's kind of a weird cult sex orgy where everyone has carnival masks on, and it's mimicking like Catholic things because they have one of those pots on a chain that have smoke coming out of it.
Yeah, the incense thing. My first thought was watching the scene, I was like, okay, I get it. You got the masks on and but I was like, this is just too much effort.
Yeah, first of all, that's like really shitty to coordinate.
Yeah.
Second of all, there's nothing sexy about those masks.
Oh, I didn't think the mask part was meant to be that. It's just a hiding identities. But I just meant like the whole walking around with the incense thing, and they're all kneeling, standing, whatever. And I was just like, that's just too much pomp and circumstance here for, hey, let's just have a good time.
You know what? When I was watching it, the first thing I thought was, whoever organized the swinger parties that was Eyes Wide Shut scene probably hadn't seen the movie, because there was nothing sexy about that scene or any of it for me, really. Even when he's like walking around and watching people have sex, I was like, they're wearing masks, and they're like, there's like two girls like 69ing, but like you can't do that with a mask on.
Yeah, I thought that was them specifically was comical.
Stupid.
I figured that was more just for show. That it's like, you know.
I don't know. It was just like, this isn't sexy. The logistics don't make sense. There's way too much like pageantry going on. Anyways.
Yeah. Yes, we'll get back to it. You digress. Okay. So he's at the party. He's not supposed to be party.
The girl with the biggest headdress chooses him. They walk along. Hey, did you know her voice was Cate Blanchett's voice?
I did.
Okay, me too.
But again, I just found that out doing research for this episode.
Yeah, me too. I did research this time. Boop,
nice. Boop. I thought that was interesting that it wasn't revealed until like a few years ago that was her voice, though.
Yeah, well, because the actress they got couldn't do an American accent because it was filmed mostly in England.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, boom. She's like, you got to get out of here. Your life is in danger. They know you don't belong. And he's like, whatever. And he stays.
Yeah.
And then he looks around and walks through rooms and blah, blah, blah. And then he gets summoned back to the main room. There's a guy on a throne, and he's like, what's the password? So he says the password, and he's like, what's the second password? And Bill's like, I don't remember.
Mm.
And he's like, well...
Sidebar. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. What's that?
I was going to say sidebar. Immediately when the guy was like, what's the second password? I was like, there is no second password, idiot. You're going to get caught here. And he's like, oh, I don't remember. And I was like, you should have rolled with the first password guy.
Well, I agree. And then I also was like, why didn't he leave when Lady said to leave? What a fucking idiot.
Sure, that as well. But anyway, continue on.
The didn't look fun.
Yeah.
There wasn't even balloons. Come on, guys.
Yeah, and there was no refreshments.
Yeah, where's the buffet table? Where's the sexy girls with sushi on them?
But anyway, sorry. So yeah, he gets into the throne room and the other guys are like, what's the second password? And he's like, I don't remember. And everyone does the chattering. Whoo, da, da, da.
And they're like, take off your mask. Get naked. We're gonna do something. Yeah. And then the girl with the really big headdress is like, I will take his place. And they're like, then she gets dragged off and he gets escorted out.
Yeah.
And then he goes home and he stashes his costume in a really cool looking, like, low buffet kind of retro, I don't know, like 70s kind of piece of furniture that I thought was really cute.
It'd be where your vinyl would go.
Yeah, totally. I want like a TV stand like that, but Tony doesn't like it. He has boring taste in furniture. Yeah, and then he goes into his room. It's like 4 a.m. and Alice is laughing in her sleep, and he wakes her up, and she is like all upset, and she's like, I had a dream where I had to have sex with all these men in front of you. And then I needed to laugh at you because you're pathetic and they hate you. Right?
Summed up, but kind of, yes.
And then she's all upset because she had this nightmare. Mm-hmm. And then he looks mad.
Sure.
So the next day, he goes and he returns the costume and he figures out that the mask is missing. Which he just pays for, but he's like a little bit spooked about it.
Yeah.
The owner of the costume shop kind of offers him to. Oh, the guys come out and they're all in a good mood, and he's like, I thought you were calling out the police on these two men, and he's like, no, we worked out a deal. And then his daughter comes and stands beside him, and he's like, everything here is for sale. Everything. Yeah. Even her.
Yeah.
And then he leaves. Which is good. I'm glad there wasn't like a weird scene between them.
Yeah.
Then he tries to track down his friend Nick Nightingale.
Yeah, which was before he returned the costume, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It doesn't matter. He's trying to track down Nick. Can't find him.
Track down Nick. He gets a coffee. he goes to Nick's hotel where Alan Cumming is the bellhop, and he had to audition 6 times for the role, even though he's in it for like a minute.
Yeah.
And he finds out that Nick checked out and that he had a bruise on his face.
Yeah, with two
large
dudes, men.
2 large men. And then he goes to work, and then he keeps thinking about Nicole Kidman and a dude having sex in black and white.
Yeah.
So he leaves work early. Is that when he tries to go back to the sex worker's house?
Yeah, I think it's around that kind of time.
But she's not there. Her roommate's there. So then he tries to have sex with her roommate, and she's like, no, my roommate has just found out she's HIV positive. So he gets all upset and he leaves. That scene's actually great because he's like, I'm hot shit. I'm going to have sex finally. And then she's like, oh, yeah, she's HIV positive. And then he's like, oh. I think it's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah, it's kind of odd for sure because, previously he's like hesitant or whatever, and this one he's just like, yeah, getting all over you, and it's like,
he's like, I'm gonna go for it. I've got the confidence. I'm a strong, independent doctor. Like I've said 7 million times before.
Yeah, that was one thing I was gonna definitely bring up. I think that's hilarious how he's always flashing his like medical, like I'm a doctor or whatever. It's like, dude, it's not a cop badge. Just ease it down a notch.
Yep. Okay, so then he leaves there. I think that's when he sees the dude following him.
Yeah, it's around that kind of timeline. Well, because he goes from there and then, because then he sees the dude following him and then he gets that paper, which I loved.
Why did you love that? Because
the front line says, to be glad to be alive or something along those lines, or it's great to be alive.
Oh.
Because before that, because he does go back to the house that the orgy was at. They gets a note saying, like, don't investigate further. This is your last warning, blah, blah, blah.
Right. I forgot.
Yeah, that's fine.
I liked that note. It was very, like, Wes Anderson looking.
Yeah. And then, like I said, he gets that paper and it says, like, glad to be alive on it, because then he reads in the paper about how a woman is dead.
Yeah, there's a beauty queen overdosed in her hotel room. So he goes down to the hospital and pretends to be her doctor, and then he ends up in the morgue, and he sees that it's Mandy from party number 1, the Christmas party. And then he gets all sad, and I thought he was going to kiss her, and I was like, don't kiss the corpse, don't kiss the corpse.
Well, and that's the implication, again, that, he's kind of losing it a little bit. And I also thought that, which is great acting, as it were.
Yes. Oh, then he gets a call to go back to the rich guy who had the Christmas party's house.
Yeah.
And he goes there, and the rich guy says, I was also at that party. These people are rich and powerful. I can't tell you who they are, but you have to stop investigating. You're overreacting. Nick's fine. He's back in Seattle. Bill's like, was Mandy the girl with the big headdress? And he's like, yep. And he's like, what happened to her? And he's like, she just went off and had a bunch of sex. And then he's like, but she's dead now. And he's like, yeah, she had a drug use problem.
You were there.
You know this. You saw her overdose before.
Yeah. Well, and he also reveals, he's like, the whole thing was just like a show to kind of get you out of there. And he's like, we didn't do anything to her. Like, that wasn't, going to be planned at the party anyway. Also, the way he kind of agrees that it was Mandy is kind of like, it's like he's making it up almost in a sense, where it's like, he's like, it doesn't matter. It was just a lady. Like,
yeah, he's so like, it's just a sex worker. Don't worry about it.
Well, or it's just like, we don't know if it was Mandy or not, in a sense that he's like, it could have been Mandy.
Yeah. So then he goes home,
mm-hmm.
and his masquerade mask is on the bed next to a sleeping Alice. Can I ask you something? Because I was a little unclear about this.
Yeah.
Did she find the mask and put it there, or did somebody break into their house and put the mask there?
I also don't know, and I like both explanations because that's what I thought immediately as well.
Yeah.
So, because I thought the same thing. I was just like, okay, yeah, did she find it, or did someone come in and put it there?
Yeah, because if she found it, and he confessed to her. So what happens, sorry, is that he starts crying. She wakes up and he confesses everything to her.
Yes.
That's happened over the past 2 days. So if she found it, put it there, and he confessed to her, that makes his character different than if somebody broke in and put it there and he confessed everything to her.
Yeah.
Because if she's confronting him and he's owning up to it, that makes him a slightly different man than if he's owning up to it because he feels guilty, right?
Yeah.
Then they go out Christmas shopping, and the last line of the movie is Alice saying, "Let's go home and fuck."
Yeah.
The end.
Oh, sorry.
Santa brings him presents.
Yeah, it was funny because when she was, saying that stuff, and I was like, when she's paused before she's like, we have to do or whatever, and I was like, is she gonna? And then she did, and I was like, huh. I mean, that's what I thought she would say, but I wasn't sure if they were gonna go that direction.
Yeah. I was just like, what? When the credits started rolling, I'm like, what's going on? Like, oh, it's over. Okay. You know what, this movie, have you ever read Catcher in the Rye?
I have not.
The Catcher in the Rye is about like a teenage boy who basically does a bunch of stuff in one night.
Right.
Some of it lives up to his expectations, but most of it doesn't. And that's what this movie felt like to me. It felt like a grown-up Catcher in the Rye.
Right. Well, that's a pretty apt comparison, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know. So, what are your thoughts about this movie?
Well, it was interesting because, like I was saying previously, is that the movie didn't do a good enough job for me conveying. There was like one time early in the movie. Sorry, this is what I'm trying to get at. One time earlier in the movie when Tom Cruise, I think he was before he tries to go on this thing. Like he imagines you get that shot with Nicole Kidman and the military guy after her story. And then it cuts to his face, and like I was like, okay, you can tell that he's like, mad, seething, and chewing on this, scenario that he's spinning in his brain. But that was like the only time I got the sense of like what he was feeling, because it almost seems like out of nowhere where he's suddenly like, I'm gonna go and hang out and like go with this prostitute. I was like, what are you doing? Like you literally just had 2 hours ago, let's say, a conversation with your wife about, we're both not going to cheat, and she had a fantasy once. And I was like, yeah, okay, she thought about having sex with another dude once or potentially ending the marriage. She didn't. It was a fantasy thing. And now you're just like, I'm going to go pick up random ladies. I was like, what?
Yeah, like, was he so naive to think that his wife never dreamed about anybody else?
Yeah, that's what I was like. It's just kind of like, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't make sense. Because apparently there was some, I don't know if you saw that, where there was script narration that Tom Cruise was going to do like voiceover, and Kubrick cut all that out from the script.
Oh, really? That's probably a good choice. It would have seemed kind of cheesy, I think, if they had done a voiceover.
Well, it has someone who hasn't seen previous Kubrick work that actually he does do that a lot.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, and to either narrate the story or bring you into the world or, this or that, because that's what I'm saying is that I never got, until I read the book synopsis, what the hell Tom Cruise's motivation was.
I mean, I could tell he was upset.
Sure, but I just meant, like, why would you suddenly go from, like, wait, my wife thought about having sex with someone else? I'm going to go try to break into this random orgy.
What was his motivation in the book?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that like I said, the synopsis explained about how, because of this revelation, like I said, I just didn't get that from the movie, whereas I got that from the text.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But my overall thoughts, like I was saying previously, is that I thought there were some really cool, like you were saying, the cinematography, everything put together, and there was so much craft that I liked all that. And there was some really cool moments when the movie kind of almost got going, essentially. It's like when they got to the orgy on, that's when things became interesting.
I felt like there was a lot of good pieces in it. like it looked very pretty. It looked interesting. I felt like the entire cast was great except for Tom Cruise.
Right.
Yeah, everybody else seemed to make sense to me, but I don't know. There's something about his face that makes me just see a chill, friendly dude.
Right. Well, and I thought it was kind of interesting watching something with Tom Cruise where, of course, he's more done Mission Impossible movies and like Edge of Tomorrow and stuff like that more recently, where it's like I said, there was those couple scenes where he had some old school Tom Cruise like charm. And I was like, oh, he's charming and fun in this scene, right?
Yeah, that was kind of in the middle of his like lots of dramatic movies, wasn't it? Because Vanilla Sky came out in 2001.
Yeah, and when he was working on this, of course, he got offered Magnolia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. When did that come out?
I don't know. Going back to what I was reading from the behind the scenes, and I can kind of empathize in Tom Cruise's corner.
Same year. Sorry.
Oh, same year. Sorry.
Yeah.
I could kind of emphasize that he wasn't getting the direction that maybe could have worked to help him make his character work in a sense. So he was just like, okay, I'm just going to do 100 takes of this line, and one of them hopefully is the one Kubrick likes.
Yeah, I don't know.
But like you said, I liked that. I liked your text about the orgy, the menace at the end of the scene there, and where that tension starts to wrap up or ratchet up, where everything seems off. When he's returning the costume and things are weird. He can't find his friend, and then Alan Cummings telling him about these dangerous men that were with him and stuff like that. I liked all that because he's just a doctor, like he's not a spy or anything, and it's just like, how would he deal with that in this weird world? So,
so first of all, did you think that the orgy was actually doing those things that he thought they were doing? Or do you think that his rich friend was telling the truth?
Sorry, there was a side where you cut out there. I didn't catch the whole question. Like, the orgy was doing what?
Sorry, do you think that Tom Cruise's perception of what was going on was correct, or do you think what his friend had told him is the truth?
Which friends? Like the Sidney Pollack character?
I have the rich dude that had
rich dude at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was more leaning towards when he was like, no, it was all just a show, blah blah blah. I bought his explanation of it, that they were just like, we're just trying to get rid of you because you were not supposed to be there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Not that it matters in the end, because that's not what the movie was like really about.
Yeah.
I think I find it hard to relate to this movie because ultimately what it is like a rich white guy finds out that his wife is sometimes attracted to other men and has a tantrum for 2 days. It's hard to get behind that for me. I'm sorry.
No, I totally agree, because that's exactly what I was saying. Like, when he's just like going off and then like, I'm gonna go try to have sex with this hooker, and then like, oh, okay, I'm gonna call that woman back who's said she was in love with me. Everything he's trying, it's just like, it's just okay because your wife fantasized about another dude and then had a dream. Like, chill it down, man.
Yeah, she didn't cheat on you with the European guy. Like, she really could have easily done it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it's just kind of, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I also agree, is that his motivation or what he's doing, I'm like, what are you doing?
Did you watch the Wisecrack video about it?
I did not.
So they had a theory that, like, the message behind this movie was that everybody has a price. And that, like, and in their own way, like, everybody is kind of, for lack of a better word, a whore. Right.
I mean, that's a message you've seen a lot. That kind of stuff gets talked about a lot, yeah.
Yeah, because they specifically talk about, like, Alice's job in the movie is to be, like, an attractive wife that everybody wants. And they, like, show that, like, when during the day after the Christmas party, when they're showing Bill at work going through his work stuff. They're showing her at home just making herself look good.
Right.
And then they talk about, like, you know, with the taxi driver, he comes at a price.
The costume shop, of course. Yeah, because he splashes money the entire evening to, like, get his way. He's just like, I'll give you more, I'll give you more, I'll give you more.
I kind of love just Tom Cruise flashing money around.
Yeah, no, I like that sequence, and totally falls into what you're saying there, because he's just like, yeah, I'll give you $200, and the guy's like, okay, I'll give you 100, okay.
And even though, like, Tom Cruise is paying most of the people, even he's kind of bought because he makes exceptions for his rich patients to go do house calls.
Sure.
They also point out, I can't remember who, but somebody wrote a book or a paper or whatever about the movie, and they said that, like, Alice's and Bill's first line in the movie describes their characters. So Bill's first line is, "Where's my wallet?" Right. And Alice's first line is, "How do I look?"
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's some interesting stuff if you want to, like, look really deep into it. I find the fact that people are looking deep into it to be more interesting than the actual movie, though.
Well, and of course, that's Kubrick's staple stuff. There's all sorts of stuff in his movies, right?
But I don't know. Like, it's not a movie that I would just put on to watch. It's not like Princess Diaries, where I could watch it like 100 times and enjoy it every single time.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that as well. It's definitely not just hey, I'm just going to put this on. And even some of his other stuff, like 2001 and Space Odyssey, like you mentioned, and stuff, like, I could put that on while I'm editing. This I couldn't put on while I'm editing because the cinematography is great, sure, but it just doesn't have that same feel.
I didn't think it was that enjoyable as a movie. Like, I mean, like, not enjoyable, entertaining.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I wasn't also not engaged with the movie until I've read a little more about the source material. Then the movie became more interesting to me.
Yeah, it's weird though, hey? Like, it's weird watching a movie and being like, well, it was good, but I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't entertained, and I never want to see it again.
Yeah, and that's fine. That happens, right? But there's still a lot of interesting things about the movie and a lot to talk about. I'm glad I finally did see it, I guess, in a sense, because, like I said, I had never seen it before. And yeah, grudgingly, it's grown a little bit on me, but it's not something I would just, if someone asked, like, oh, Stanley Kubrick, what should I watch? I would probably say The Shining right away. Or
you'd be like, Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
And then anything else, because it'll seem good by comparison.
Yeah, and so exactly, right, that it's not something I would recommend to the average viewer, let's say.
I don't know who I would recommend this to be honest.
I think a Kubrick completionist or somebody looking for something, interesting to delve into.
Yeah, I mean, people who have a crush on Nicole Kidman.
Sure.
Yeah, and Stanley and a Stanley completionist. That's it. People who love Christmas movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, like, it's not bad, but, like, I don't think there's nobody that I can think of being like, oh man, you know what? I lied. Film school students who want to seem smarter than they are. That's who I recommend this movie to.
Sure. Well, and that's exactly it. Like you said, there's a lot to kind of delve and dissect in the movie, but the movie itself, I didn't find very engaging until the latter half, let's say. But even then, I was kind of just like, all right, so you went to this thing, it was weird, move on.
You went to the least sexy sex party ever.
Yeah.
And then you regretted it.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah, let's circle back to what you were saying. What do you think? Okay, like, so if Nicole Kidman found the mask, what do you think about that versus somebody placing the mask there? Because you were saying the guilt versus not guilt, I guess.
Well,
but wouldn't he feel guilty either way? Because then she's like, hey, I found this mask. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to confess the whole thing. Instead of just like making up a story where he's like, oh, I was whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I was getting at. There's difference between owning up to something because you've been confronted and owning up to something because you feel like it's the right thing to do. Because if a stranger placed the mask on that pillow, he could just hide the mask.
Yeah.
And then never tell her anything. If she didn't know about the mask, he could have just not told her anything. And if that was the case, if a stranger had put it there and then he said, oh, I've decided that this is a sign that I need to come forward and have total transparency in my marriage, and I owe it to my wife, then that's one thing. Whether or not I think that's the right choice is another matter, but like that makes one type of person, and it's a different type of person if she found it, put it there, and he knew that she found it, and he's like, fuck, I'm in shit now, I better come clean.
Right. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
And if she did find it and put it there, and we're on the assumption that she knew that's what that mask was for, then does that mean that she's involved with it? Because that also makes her character different if she's going to billionaire sex parties where she has to wear a mask and a cloak and no one knows who she is. Like
I assumed...
if she saw him there, for example.
Right. I assumed if she did find it, she didn't know what it was for.
Right. But it does make her more interesting if she found it and she did know what it was for.
Yes.
Put it there, and then didn't come clean after he came clean.
Right.
that makes her an infinitely more interesting character to me.
Right. I don't know. I assumed if she knew about that when they did their joint smoking fight, she would have mentioned something and been like, dude, I know about orgies. Come on.
I go to this really boring sex party all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I assume she found it and didn't know what it was for. But it's weird that she put it in the bed with her. I think at that point it's more like a metaphorical mask than a physical mask, and you can't get bogged down with who put it there and why. Because what it is his discretions in like in a tangible form, and it's sitting on the bed in between them.
Yeah. Like I said, I kind of liked both explanations, and I'll keep those in my head both and be like, you're totally right. But it's also like, I like that idea that's like, they're still messing with his life.
Well, if somebody broke into his house and put the mask on the bed, then that also means that he was probably right about what was going on. And then if that's the case, then it feels like there'd be an Eyes Wide Shut 2 that was like an action thriller. Where the sex cult is trying to kill him and his family.
Only if he investigates further. If he leaves it alone, he leaves it alone.
Well, the thing is, they said if you tell another person that they'd fuck up his life. So if somebody broke in, got the sex mask, and put it on the bed, then he's actually endangering his family by coming clean to his wife.
Yeah.
Because he's just told another person, and you could be like, well, no one else was there in the room, but then at the same time, they knew where to find his sex mask when they broke into his house last night or this morning while he was sleeping, because he took it with him when he left for work.
See, I was under the assumption that he dropped and or forgot the mask somewhere, like in the cab, or he just when he was leaving the party because he took it off, that he wasn't paying attention, and then so someone else had it and then brought it to his house. Oh,
see, I thought he took it with him, and that's why he was surprised when it wasn't in the bag.
Yeah, see, I was going under the assumption that maybe he forgot it in the cab, that he was just like, mixing emotional and, weirded out, that it's just like, I left it there. Yeah. Anyway, that doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there.
To me, it's more interesting if he had the mask and either his wife or somebody broke in and took it out of his stuff. That's creepier.
That's true, yeah.
That brings in the thriller part of the erotic thriller.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that from the movie, like I said going in, that I had this idea about it that it doesn't come true, and there's almost nothing, nothing to it. But like you said, there's no like thriller angle or whatever. It's just more just him wandering around, and then the movie ends.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what makes it more interesting or less interesting. I think it would have been more entertaining if there was a sex cult after him and his family and it turned into an action adventure movie.
Or just
it would have been more
thrilling.
Suited to Tom Cruise too.
Yeah.
He could have just run the whole time instead of like speed walking. I feel like if his wife found the mask and put it there, it gives her more agency as a person.
Right.
Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I don't know, Dan. I don't know how I feel about this movie, but I did watch it, and I was curious about it beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, you chose this when I was talking about movies.
Yeah. And I don't know why anybody would want to emulate the orgy in it, because it just wasn't that interesting.
Maybe they just take the look part and then, have their own fun without all that pomp.
You know what this movie reminded me of a bit? American Beauty.
Right.
In that, like, the feel of the movie is that sad, middle-aged man does stupid stuff. And then the movie is over. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a story about someone.
I watched Moana on Disney Plus. That's a lot more fun.
Yeah, definitely a different genre there.
The Rock sings, and he's not very good at it.
Nice. Well, and just some trivia stuff that you may have come across as well that I thought was interesting. I'm sure the shoot was supposed to be 6 months, and then it went for 15 months.
World record for the longest shoot in movie history.
Yeah, and then I liked how this one, I'm not 100% if this is true or not, but apparently was shot on a discontinued Kodak film. So they tested film before they, and then Kubrick was like, hey, I want to do it on this film, and Kodak graciously supplied it to him, even though they discontinued it.
Oh, interesting.
And then, of course, it was shot in London, but they rebuilt all of New York as meticulous as they could.
Yeah, they took measurements of the street and put the precise placement of newsstands and mailboxes and stuff.
Yeah, and then like you were saying, how there was potentially ideas for a comedy and stuff like that. That he had the book option for more than 20 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, very crazy. And I do want to note, talking about Tom Cruise a little bit, he had some great hair in this movie.
He did have some great hair in this movie. I agree. And I liked what he wore for most of it. His suit and overcoat was a good look.
Yeah.
Hey, this scene, I can't remember where it was. I think it was before he goes to the sex worker the first time.
Mm-hmm.
When the group of frat boys call him a bunch of homophobic slurs.
Yes.
Did that have any deeper meaning? What was that? Oh, I'm just curious. Was there a point of that being in the movie?
Well, and it was weird because, again, like you're saying, it was made in a different time, and I guess because they always reference the village, that there's homosexuals that live there, I assumed, in early New York.
Yeah.
And so
it's kind of like a bohemian, artsy kind of area.
Because a few people make references to potentially Tom Cruise being gay, and then, like you said, those frat guys, taunt him and stuff like that. And I guess it was like a weird
Alan
thing
Cumming
that ran.
Comes onto him. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
what?
No, that's exactly it. It ran through the whole movie that every other scene practically there was something like that going on.
But was that
I guess you could take it as that they were taunting his manhood, and so he was like, "I'm not gay. I'm gonna go have sex with a woman to prove that.
I'm gonna go pay a woman to have sex with me to prove that I'm not gay."
Yeah. I also was very unsure about it. I guess it was just he met some ruffians, and it unsettled him.
I think in the book, I remember reading that it was people mocking him for being Jewish.
Mm.
And that he had the character in the book had a different name than Bill whatever.
Yeah, it was something like Filoni or something like that.
Yeah, and then Kubrick wanted like a Harrison Ford-esque actor to play him, and that's why his last name starts with an H, because it was like or what was his last name in it? Bill
Harford.
It was like an homage to Harrison Ford.
Oh yeah. I can see that now.
Yeah.
Harford. Yeah.
And then but then they wanted to take out the Jewish stuff, and they replaced it with people being
making homosexual jokes. Yeah. Making homophobic slurs, I guess.
Yeah. But it felt very like, it felt out of place for me, but it might be because I'm watching it in 2020 and not 1999.
Yeah, that's what I also kind of took it as.
Yeah, because if they wanted to, Alice in her dream, when she's like having sex with all those guys and laughing at him, like I guess that's insulting his manhood. So, but I guess you can't really be like, I don't know, have like guys knock into him and be like, you probably can't get it up or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
people's view of masculinity is different now than it was 20 years ago.
Sure.
And those frat boys, I also don't their slurs were so stupid. They're like, you want to have sex with me? And I'm like, are they hitting on him or are they insulting him? What's going on here? And then the guy like bends over and I'm like, so he's a bottom and he thinks Tom Cruise is a top? Like, what's going on here?
I took it as that they were trying to insult him. But as you say, there is a good chance that in the future, it wouldn't be an insult.
No.
Yeah.
In the future, it would be like a gang of mean gays that call him tacky or something. I
don't know. Your suit definitely needs some work.
It's not even tailored.
Yeah.
What is that, off the rack?
I guess, it was something that, it's curious thinking about it, that it's because, of course, the book took place in, like, a Vienna situation and stuff like that. Maybe he didn't want to do that again because he did Barry Lyndon, which is a period piece, that it's like if he did a period piece, maybe it would have worked better instead of a modern update of the material.
Yeah.
But I guess, like you said, you couldn't do, or you wouldn't want to approach it and, like you said, do race attacks, essentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would work in 2020 if the main character was black.
Right.
If like a group of white people walked by him and like started saying shit, right?
Sure.
I think stick to one thing. You know what I mean? Don't try to have too many messages.
Right.
Like if it's about like power and how we're all for sale, then that's one thing. If it's about figuring out what masculinity means to you, that's another thing. But like, pick a lane.
Well, and like fidelity, in a relationship and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like if it's a movie about what does it mean to cheat, like what does that look like? Then that's a different thing too. Like it doesn't have to be. I think it would be clearer if it was one thing, and you don't have to like hit people over the head like Hallmark movies where you're like, cheating means this to me. Well, cheating means this to me. Well, I had a dream about a boy. Well, I think that's cheating and I'm mad at you. Bye. It doesn't have to be that black and white, but I think if like it was one theme that he was going for, it would have been clearer, but it feels kind of muddled the way it is.
Right.
And I don't think that muddled means good or smart. I think it just means muddled.
And like I said, that was one of the failings for me, is that it was not clear in just the movie itself, because I didn't know about the source material, what was kind of the through line or going on until I found that out. And that's unfortunately a detriment to the movie.
Yeah, I think it could have been a really interesting movie if the focus was more on like what is infidelity or what is fidelity in a marriage, right?
Well, and it could
have been explored at a fun orgy where they both got to go and nobody died.
Sure. Well, and I also for a little bit was thinking that it's like, oh, are they trying to take an angle where like an unreliable narration kind of situation? But I guess they weren't, because they just smoked a little bit of pot. But it's like that could have been the angle as well, is that all these events, did they happen? Did they not? Did they happen the way I remembered them? But I think because he's done that previously already. Cool. I think he's done that already though. So because like you said, he goes to the costume shop and there's a huge argument. The next morning they're like, oh no, everything was fine. And so it's like, wait, did I remember that wrong, or did something change? Kind of thing.
Oh, I do remember reading or watching that it's supposed to have a very dreamlike feel to it.
Sure. But unfortunately it doesn't to me, except for the Christmas party scene. And only the parts with the lights.
Do you know what I think it could have benefited from? Because all the women that he comes across, like Mandy, the sex worker, her
roommate,
they're all redheads, like his wife.
Yeah, or like strawberry blonde-esque or whatever.
If they looked more similar, and it was to the point where they like even changed. I know this sounds weird, but if they like used the actresses interchangeably for the same roles. Yeah,
no, that would be awesome.
That would be really cool, right? And then you like don't know who he's talking to, and you have to you're like, was that the same girl or was that someone else? That would have been like a more interesting choice to make it more dreamlike. But no.
Well, and that was one thing when I was trying to watch, or when I was watching it as well, and I rewatched some scenes again, and then I was trying to pick out that it was like, because Nicole Kidman, of course, has very distinctive hair. That I was like, oh, could have been interesting if they did some stuff, like with, there was curly haired women and this and that, like you said, to try to like blur the lines of like who was real in this and who isn't, or like how does that kind of mess with his head a little more? But that's not kind of what it was going for. So.
Yeah, or if when he was making out with the sex worker, the first one, if like he pulled away and it was like Nicole Kidman for like a fraction of a second.
Sure.
That would have been interesting, but no.
It's not what he was going for.
Like, I just think if you want to make it seem more dreamlike, it has to be more surreal, and there just has to be more confusion almost then, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, I never got the sense that the movie was trying to be dreamlike because it felt all very grounded.
Or, what the other thing they could have done is shown less transition scenes between locations. Like if he opened a door, like he was leaving a room and then all of a sudden he's in a different building.
Yeah.
That would have been like interesting too. And then if like it just carried on like that, instead of like showing him walking down the street and stuff, that could have like achieved that dreamlike state.
But I guess they were trying to recreate from the novel that it's like it's supposed to be a journey through New York and this guy is trying to get into a different world or whatever, right? So showing a lot of the walking around and etc., right?
I think I'm more right than Stanley Kubrick.
I won't go that far, but just say there's different opinions and different approaches.
Well, I mean, he does weird stuff though. In
Absolutely.
like The Shining, a lot of weird stuff happens, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
There's like the blood evader.
Yeah.
And Dogman and Tuxedo Boy in a room. Throw some of that shit in.
Yeah. Exactly. Or that's what I'm saying is that like I never got that dreamlike sense, and that could have been an interesting angle in the movie to make it more dreamlike, and then unreliable narration or just like what was real, what wasn't.
Especially if it was realistic up until the point where he gets a phone call to visit the dead guy, after their pot fight. Their pot fight. Just picture them throwing joints at each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so if it was realistic up to that point, and then dreamlike up until he left the orgy, or up until he got called to the orgy throne, and then it snapped back to being realistic, that would have been a really interesting way to do it too.
Yeah, just like you
Like
said, just kind of beef up a little bit of those dream elements or surrealistic elements.
yeah, just in that like little section, in his escapade section, and then it left you wondering if he did go see a sex worker or if he did, especially like, okay, so here's me fixing the movie. Are you ready? So it's realistic up until he gets the phone call during the pot fight. Then it becomes a dreamlike state, and most of the events are pretty much the same as in the movie. Then it snaps back to reality as soon as he gets called in front of the sex party throne. Then it snaps back to reality again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day in daylight, when he returns the costume, like just eliminate that the teenage daughter and the two guys are there and have him like almost allude to it but get shot down by like the Russian guy.
Yeah.
So then you're like wondering if that actually happened or not. And then he goes to the sex worker's house and she's not there. Don't have the roommate recognize who he is. Yeah. So you can still have that scene between them. Don't
she just says like, oh, she's not here, but I'm here. It's all good or whatever, but not be like, oh, you were that guy from last night.
Yeah, totally, right? And he can still like have the realization that she's HIV positive and stuff, but no proof that any of the interactions actually happened.
Yeah.
And then have him trying to like find Nick Nightingale and not being able to find him, and all that can stay the same. But it leaves the audience questioning like whether or not things actually happened. And then he finds the mask in the bed.
Yeah.
That would be better.
Yeah, no, I think I'm agreeing in that. Like I said, that could have been a cool element to just but beef up a little bit of the dreamlike, surrealistic state, and then when the tension starts wrapping up, because it's like, oh, okay, is it in his head? What did he see? What was real? What wasn't? You know, and then a little paranoia kind of in there.
Yeah.
Because I did like that, because that scene when he sees that guy following him and he's like, oh shit, someone's following me, right? And he gets the paper, he tries to deke out, and then Sidney Pollack is like, yeah, I had you followed, man, because you're being stupid.
I like that too.
Yeah. He's like, you're freaking out over nothing, man. Just calm it down a notch.
You're an idiot.
Yeah. So just ease it down a notch.
Yeah, that's how I would have fixed the movie.
Sure. So overall, though, Devon, your impression, as you said previously, you wouldn't recommend / you didn't enjoy it as much.
I wouldn't say it's a bad movie, but I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't entertaining. I wasn't engaged. And there's nobody I could think to recommend it to except for like third year pretentious film school students.
Right.
How about you?
Oh, I like I said, I gave my thoughts as well, in that I also don't know who to recommend the movie to. I did enjoy it more when I kind of like found out more about the source material, and it kind of went up in a few pegs in that. And I did enjoy the second half a little more when the tension started to kind of creep in there. But overall, it was kind of just a letdown, unfortunately.
I think the most enjoyable part for me was the beginning of the movie until the end of the Christmas party. Honestly, like I think I started to lose interest after the Christmas party.
Right. And it, like I was saying, that Christmas party scene from just a pure film point of view was like I said, so warm, so put together, and it was just I was marveling at just like the colors, that I was like, wow, this was shot on just like a thing we don't see that now. Everything's so color graded and technical and digital, except for maybe Quentin Tarantino stuff here and there, but I was just like, wow, what a different era.
Yeah, it was very beautiful. I think at that point in the movie, I was still under the impression that it was about a couple who was going to go to orgies together.
Yeah, not one man.
Not just Tom Cruise running around being, what's his name? Colden Holefield or whatever from The Catcher in the Rye. Yeah. Or whoever was in American Beauty, Dad. What's his name? He's a bad guy now, right? He got in trouble.
Well, it was Kevin Spacey, yes.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey. Thank you.
I think it's probably a good time to wrap it up, though.
So we're going to add this to our holiday movie roster to watch every year with the family.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on whatever, iTunes maybe, and share it with your friends. And also follow us on social media. It's at Tome of Uselessness. You can see our website, tomeofuselessness.com, or you can email us, tomeofuselessness@gmail.com, to tell us what to watch next. Eyes Wide Shut 2, Electric Boogaloo maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you very much for listening, and we hope you have a safe and happy holiday.
Indeed. Thanks for listening and stay safe.